of Life, a show about Jewish books, music, film, and web. I'm Heidi Estrin. The Book of Life is a podcast service of the Feldman Library at Congregation B'nai Israel in Boca Raton, Florida. Additional support comes from the Association of Jewish Libraries. Deborah Heiligman is the author of Intentions, the teen novel that won the 2013 Sidney Taylor Book Award. I met up with Deborah at the Association of Jewish Libraries conference in Houston, Texas, and we sat down for a chat about what her intentions were in writing Intentions. So I'm here at the Association of Jewish Libraries conference in 2013, Houston, Texas, and I'm lucky to be sitting with Deborah Heiligman, who's the winner of the gold medal of the Sidney Taylor Book Award this year for the teen readers category for the book Intentions, which is a very unique book, and you were telling us earlier you were a little surprised that it would be chosen for the award. So tell us about the book and why you were surprised.
I was happily surprised, I should say. I was surprised just because the book has some moments where a revered Jewish religious person does some not very good things. In fact, it starts that way, with Rachel, the main character, her beloved rabbi, doing something really bad that she overhears. In fact, he's an adulterer, as your write-up put it, and she overhears that. And it rocks her world in a very big way. It rocks her faith, it rocks her sense of who she is and what kind of a place the world is. And it seems like all of the adults in her world are falling apart around her, and her best friend has basically abandoned her. So the surprise was, in some ways, that the committee stuck with it after chapter 1, where that happens, and I'm really pleased that they understood what I was trying to do in the book about exploring Rachel's religious crisis, personal crisis, and how she comes to terms with it all, and I think comes out a better person because of it, and a person who knows how to live with kavanah, with intention.
Okay, yeah, so talk a little bit about the title.
The title is Intentions. My working title was always Kavanah, and it really comes from how we're supposed to pray. We're supposed to pray with kavanah, with our full attention to the moment, the words, the meaning of the words. And I actually have taken that on for myself in my own life as a way to live. I think if we live with kavanah, with intention, as much as we possibly can, I think we're essentially doing, I guess, what Martin Buber would call serving God in every moment, which I think is being the best you that you can be. We couldn't call the book Kavanah because nobody can pronounce it correctly, but Intentions actually fits the story of the book better. What are do we have good intentions, bad intentions? Because, as you know, Rachel in the middle of the book does something really bad, with really bad intentions. You know, she really gets back at her best friend in a way that is pretty morally reprehensible. Anyway, that's why we called it Intentions.
Upon first hearing the premise of this book, some people might say, why on earth would you write about a bad rabbi? So how did this come to you? What was the inspiration for this?
Okay, first, can I just say, I don't think he's all bad. I think that was one of the things about the book I worked on the hardest, was to make him a true person, a good person who does some bad things, but he's not all bad. The inspiration came from a number of different places, something that happened in my own community when I was a child, which is a long, long time ago. Things that happen all the time in our world. We're constantly reading about presidents, politicians, celebrities having affairs, shoplifting, doing all kinds of bad things, right? So what about what happens when that comes close to home, when it happens right in your own community or in your own home? If you're an impressionable child, how do you then deal with it in your own life? That was the inspiration. When I first started writing it, President Bill Clinton was in office, and there was the whole Monica Lewinsky scandal, and then there was, around the same time, a rabbi in New Jersey who was convicted of hiring somebody to kill his wife. So there's a lot of real-life stuff that happens. I'm particularly interested in what a teenager will do with that kind of thing. And so that was the inspiration for writing the book.
Have you had any pushback from, I'm sure not from teenagers probably, but from adults who select books for teenagers for either the topic, which as you said earlier is kind of out on a limb, or for some of the strong language?
I have not personally had any pushback. I'm not somebody who goes and reads the reviews on Goodreads or anything like that, so I don't know for sure, but I haven't heard of any challenges to it. when I was writing the book, I was very concerned about all of these things. I mean, I wanted it to have readers. I didn't want people to block kids from reading it. But when you put 14 and up on a book, and this is what my editor kept telling me on the many phone calls we had about all of these issues, she said that if you put 14 and up in a book, really you're allowed to do anything. If you put 12 and up in a book, you know a 9 or 10-year-old is maybe going to read it. But if you put 14 and up in a book, we trust librarians and teachers and booksellers to put it in the right place. And I don't believe in censoring books for kids anyway. I mean, just personally censoring as a parent. I never did. The more pushback I got was when that one of the editors wouldn't even read it because the idea of it upset her too much. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I didn't have pushback for Charles and Emma either. I really expected that. I don't know. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. Maybe I'm not pushing hard enough.
People like your books too much. Oh no. Well, you mentioned Charles and Emma, which has nothing to do with Jewish books, but it's a really interesting book. So just give us a real brief description of that.
Sure. Charles and Emma, The Darwin's Leap of Faith. It's the story of the marriage of Charles Darwin. And the reason I found that so interesting was that Emma was a very religious person. She was terrified that she would be separated from her beloved husband for all eternity because he would go to hell and she would go to heaven, and that they had a long and happy marriage. So that's what the book is about, how they overcame their own personal differences to create this amazing relationship and family, and how, in fact, she was his best reader and editor for his work, even though she was upset that he was taking God out of creation, as she put it. That was my first book for YA, actually, and Intentions is my second book for YA.
And that was nonfiction.
And that was very much nonfiction, but it was written in a novelistic style, meaning that I used scenes and dialogue but it was all true. Every word of it was true. So it was actually writing that book that gave me the courage to finally finish Intentions, which I meant to say earlier in my speech and didn't get to. But
so I'm glad you got to say it now.
Yes.
Are you working on anything that would be of Jewish interest?
I have a new book coming out next week. It's a picture book biography about a mathematician called Paul Erdős. It's called The Boy Who Loved Math, The Improbable Life of Paul Erdős. He was Jewish. It's an amazing story of a person who was not an ordinary person, who found a way to fit into the world in a very unordinary way, but in a wonderful way in which he contributed to so many people and to all of us, because his math led to things like Google and encryption codes. And the Jewish content of the book is not very high because he was not somebody who was a practicing Jew. But when I talked to this one, happened to be Jewish mathematician, about him, he said to me, "You know, Deborah, there's no way I can talk about Paul Erdős except in religious terms, because he was almost saint-like or godlike in a beautiful way."
In the mathematician community?
In the mathematician community, because he was so generous with his brain. People loved him and they took care of him because he was not very good in taking care of himself. And I have another nonfiction book I'm working on for young adults about the Van Gogh brothers, so not Jewish there. However, in my pipeline, I've partly written 2 novels that both have Jewish content.
Okay, good. So we'll keep our eyes open for those. Amy Lurie, the chair of the Sidney Taylor Book Award Committee, this morning in the session where you spoke, mentioned, and this has nothing to do with anything, but it's just so much fun. She mentioned that when she called you to tell you you were the winner, that you have the best voicemail message ever. So just tell us about that.
Well, this is also a children's book thing. I was on a panel at the Virginia Festival of the Book not long after Charles and Emma came out, with this woman, her name is Emily Ecton, and she just looked at me and was all, reverential about Charles and Emma, and I love that book so much, blah, 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 and, and I'm just like, yeah, that's thank you, and tell me about you, and she said, well, she had written a funny middle grade novel. She said, but the other thing that I do is I'm a producer of Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me, and I just screamed. I said, are you kidding me? I love that show. I just went wild, and I said, I would love to have Carl Castle's voice on my voicemail, but I'm too chicken to call in and play one of the games because I'm sure I'm going to lose. And she said, I'll put you in as a listener contestant, one of those people that the celebrities play for. And I thought, she probably says that to all the girls, And so then I get an email from her, and she says, the Village People are playing for you this week. And I was so nervous. And fortunately, I had a writer's retreat, so I couldn't actually listen when it was being broadcast, but darn it if those Village People didn't win for me. So I have Carl Castle's voice. You get to write your own message, and then he reads it, and they give you a CD. So it took me and my husband's also a writer, and our 2 sons about a month to come up with a draft that we really liked. And so then he recorded it, and we had the full message on our answering machine for a really long time. It was very funny. But then we were getting messages messages on our cell phones and say, like Aunt Doris would say, I'm calling you on your cell phone because I don't want to listen to Carl Castle anymore. And finally, one of our sons said, it is a little bit long. Uh-huh. So Benjamin, the one who's here with me at the conference, he edited it down. So I think what Amy heard was a shortened version, but it's still pretty awesome.
That is awesome. That's great.
It says something like, Deborah Heiligman and Jonathan Weiner are never going to answer their phone again, so you can hear my voice. And in fact, we don't.
That's great. Is there anything else that you want to say that I have not asked you about?
I just want to say that this book, Intentions, was so much a book from my heart. I really hope that this award helps get it in the hands of teens. I think that it's a little bit harder to get in the hands of teens because of this so much Jewish content. And I'm hoping that Jewish professionals, librarians, and youth group leaders and, people who are working with teens will find ways to get it into their hands, because I think the subject matter that's in it, the juiciness of it, is something that kids really want to think about and talk about. So if anybody out there has any ideas about how to help me make that happen. When I was a kid, I thought about this stuff all the time, and I think kids still do. Like, what do we do with this feeling that the world is not the place that we thought it was? And so many kids go off the rails at that time, and I'd like to bring them back into Judaism, into really happy life.
Find a way to rebuild trust.
Exactly.
After the world has started disappointing them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm hoping that this book can help do it, but the only way it can is if it actually gets into people's hands.
Yes. Right.
I hope this award does what it should do, which is helps me be better.
I hope so
known.
too.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm so grateful for the award. I mean, I said in my talk today, I cried when Amy called, and I cried some more when I told my husband, and we were just so happy. It just was such a validation and a vindication of what I was trying to do, and that you got it. That just meant so much to me, means so much to me.
That's beautiful. There's some extra goodies online that go along with this book. Tell us about those.
I created a playlist because, in fact, when I was writing the book, I listened to a lot of popular music, and I got recommendations from my son's friends, and then created Pandora stations where I would listen to, and I would learn all this new music. And some of them ended up in the book. I really think it helped me get into Rachel's head and Rachel's character and into that world. So the playlist is up on my website. I think it's on the Random House website too. And also, I made a trailer for the book, which I really, really love, which my son did the music for. He wrote an original song for it, and then a friend of his did the filming. And I was sort of the producer. We had so much fun doing it. And so that's on my website too, DeborahHeiligman.com, DeborahHeiligman. So if you get those two H's in the middle, DeborahHeiligman.com.
All right, two H's in a row, so...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Deborah Heiligman, thank you so much.
Thank you, Heidi. As always, lovely to see you and talk to you.
Hello, this is Carl Castle from NPR with these news headlines. The global warming crisis has been averted. Scientists have sequenced the gene for talking during movies and have found your missing socks. And the Republicans have apologized to Democrats, saying, "You were right." In other news, Deborah Heiligman and Jonathan Weiner are never going to answer their phone again so that you can hear my voice. Please leave them a message.
There are so many ways to connect with the Book of Life. Fan us at facebook.com/Book of Life Podcast. Follow us at twitter.com/Book of Life Pod. Email us at bookoflifepodcast@gmail.com or leave us a voicemail at 561-206-2473. You can also listen to the latest episode by phone at 916-313-3820. And, of course, find links to everything at bookoflifepodcast.com. The Book of Life is a podcast service of the Feldman Library at Congregation B'nai Israel in Boca Raton, Florida at cbiboca.org and is supported in part by the Association of Jewish Libraries at jewishlibraries.org. Our background music is provided by the Freilich Makers Klezmer String Band at freilockmakers.com. Thanks for listening and happy reading.